Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and today I'm very privileged to bring you a good friend of mine, fellow coach and fucking legend on this journey of supporting and being in service of men, and that is Traver Boehm. Traver has been on the podcast before, in fact, a couple of times. One was when he and I had a joint conversation where we both had a conversation about some things, and we shared it on each of our shows. So it wasn't me interviewing him, and it also wasn't him interviewing me. So we realized, oh shit, we need to do that. So he interviewed me. I was on his podcast recently, and it was time to actually have a conversation with him more about him and his ideas and so on, than that two-way conversation. Although, of course, these conversations are a two-way conversation. He's also appeared on the two-part conversation I had with him and the other men in our close men's circle around the power and importance of having good men in your life, in your corner. That was a snippet from Traver in this one. Today's episode, we dive into quite a few things, to be honest. We explore, he has the UnCivilized Movement, the UnCivilized Nation is his coaching program, let's call it. And, this idea of the uncivilized man. So we break that down a little bit, looking at the paradigms that were there, the kind of old school Marlboro man and the kind of new school, new age man, the all rigid, all backbone, and the all heart. And really what I'm getting from the uncivilized man is kind of the equal parts heart and backbone. But he also expands upon that with a different version that he's also seeing as well. We talk about some of the challenges that we see in men, but more so one of the things I invite Traver to explore is some of the problems that he sees that men aren't aware of, that men miss. So it's a really powerful piece that he speaks to there. And I think definitely worth checking out. We start to explore some little pieces around purpose and listening to the whisper of your soul and so on. And I also ask Traver what I think was, I was going to say a curly question, but maybe not at all, because he rattled off some answers pretty damn quick towards the end. So make sure you check out that one, because I think that's a pretty great question where we explore, if he were the president of the United States, what would he do? A wonderful conversation, as always, with Traver. He's a man of great depth. We talk about that, men of depth, with this well-rounded kind of man quite a bit. And I really do appreciate Traver for who he is and what he does in the world. I am certain you'll get something from this episode. As always, wherever you listen to this podcast, whatever app that you use for podcasts, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave us a review. It's an extremely powerful way of getting this in front of more men. And the simplest thing you can do after that is share this episode with a man in your life. Traver might be new to you. He might be someone that you follow. Share this with a man in your life as well that you think could benefit from it and get something from it and enjoy it. As always, greatly appreciate your listenership. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Mike. How the fuck are you? And let's enjoy the show. You ready to dive in?
Dude, look at this. Born ready.
Were you born ready? Traver Boehm, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I think I was. I think I came out running, man.
You know what? I think I like this idea, right? Because it's such a, it's a cliche, I suppose, right? Like, I was born ready, motherfucker, let's go.
Yeah.
And when we zoom out on that, we all were. We were born ready to be molded on some level, right? And then we do work where some shit got in the way, and we are dealing with and supporting and diving into and helping some men where maybe that readiness, something happened there. And you have this beautiful notion that I love of the uncivilized man. And what I'm kind of extrapolating and inserting into this conversation is somewhere along the way that readiness changes, and clearly in your eyes you've seen this idea of the civilized man. Can you talk us through what do you see that as the journey there? Where you go.
It's shifted, Mike. I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, when I first put this all together, the two predominant paradigms that I saw were the 1950s Marlboro man, who was disassociated from his feelings, thought the feminine was weak, was like the classic loner. A lot of our dads and grandfathers, right? All do, no feel. And then there was the sensitive new age guy, which was the opposite of that, which was all feel, no do, which was the guy that was terrified. He'd had some masculine wound. like was angry at dad, so he just hung out with mom, thought like
Mm,
girls were much more fun or like easier and safer to be around than men were, didn't
mm,
want to really do anything with his life. And that was 6 years ago. And I literally said this yesterday. Like, I think there's now, so sorry, my goal was to create a third paradigm,
mm,
the uncivilized paradigm, where you took a little bit of the 1950s Marlboro, you took the leadership, you took the resilience, you took some of the stoicism, you
mm,
took the ruggedness, the competencies. And then from the sensitive new age guy, you actually took emotional intelligence. You
mm,
took the ability to feel, the ability to express feelings, the ability to be in, as Dewey Freeman says, in contact in relationship. That was my idea. There was a
mm,
third. But now I also think there's a fourth, and it's not a good one. That it's one of the now three negatives, and that's just the overall collapsed man. And
mm,
that is the guy that's rejecting sensitive new age. He's rejecting 19. He doesn't know that he can actually get up and do something with his life. He's
mm,
either been beaten down by life, he's been beaten down by trauma, he's just like started and stopped too many times. Like he
mm,
never got the early wins. And so he's just like, I don't even want to play the game anymore. And
mm,
unfortunately, these are the guys that we see heavily addicted, or even more unfortunately, taking their own lives. And
mm,
that's a very real part of the population. That's a very real group of the population, especially now. And I feel like a number of guys have dropped out of 1950s Marlboro and sensitive new age guy and dropped down into that collapsed male. And
mm.
that's the most heartbreaking. That was COVID. That was some of the things that were coming up before COVID. That's just like, I can't win, so I'm not even going to play the game anymore.
Yeah, and I suppose with, it sounds like a cliche almost to bring this next line in, but the rise of technology, or perhaps the ease at which you can tune out from the world
Mm-hmm.
has increased dramatically, right? Like I was
Right.
chatting with someone last week, and part of his journey, certainly as a teenager, was like spending, as he said, 14, 15, 16 hours a day in his room
Oh,
gaming, like tune into something and tune out of the world. Like there's just, I'm
right.
not going to bother. And of course, there's stages in our lives where we might do different little things, but that, regardless of
Sure.
the age, is like an intense amount of time in a place that is not reality.
Yeah. Like I am the old guy in this conversation. I'm 47 and fully like get off my lawn conversations with people who are like, this is what happened when I was like 10. My mom was like, hey, it's 9 a.m. Get the hell out of the house.
Mm,
Someone in the neighborhood will yell and it's time to come home. Right. And like that little band of kids, like we went in the forest and we played kickball and we crashed our bikes and we had lunch at so and so's house. And
yeah.
also, there were hard times.
Mm,
There were challenges that we as young people had to overcome. Even, you use the
mm,
idea of technology with men. Like I remember being in high school and having like sitting there staring at the damn phone, be like, all right, I'm gonna call this girl that I'm interested in, and I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna get her mom or I'm gonna get her dad. And
mm.
I'm going to have like a 30-second conversation of like, hi, Mrs. Johnson, is Karen available? This is Traver. And I'm going to feel like I'm going to throw up.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm going to push all of the buttons, but the last one, and then I'm going to hang up the phone. And I'm going to do this for like 10 or 15 minutes until I finally get the courage to actually make the phone call. Now, in hindsight, even that little bit like molded me for life.
Mm,
Like, hey, if you
mm,
want something, there's a cost to it.
mm,
It may not be a giant, like life-changing cost, but nothing's for free.
mm.
Yet now, how many guys can sit here and dial up women on their phones? Just all it takes is a swipe, some innocuous texts, or even, not even that. Just look
Yeah, a
at
dick
porn,
pic.
right? Right. And then, yeah,
Yeah,
then
yeah. Sending some of
well-crafted
your own, or
garment.
just downloading everything that's available online.
I love that's where your brain
Yeah.
went. So I
Is
think
this?
there's
I would like your attention. Here's a picture of my penis. I think this works.
I wrote a whole article called Carpe Dick Pic
Yeah.
that explained like the actual thought process of the guy of like, man, this is gonna work. This is gonna be the best. And it's like I had you called it like the ugly baby theory. When people are like, oh, look at my beautiful baby, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of cute. That's like every woman getting a dick pic where you're like, wow, look at mine. It's so special. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh,
Can I see your butthole as well? Like while we're at it, let's really open up the good looking pieces of your anatomy.
yeah, seriously. Just a picture of my armpit.
Yeah. Have you got anything that you would take to the GP that you're worried about? Show me that too.
Yeah. So I agree with you. It's cliche, but it's not.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you and I actually have to deal with this. The difference is we have a memory of a
Mm,
time and multiple times when we actually had to work for things.
mm,
When I couldn't hit a button on my phone and then
mm,
2 days later, whatever I ordered showed up at my door. Yes, I had to pay for it, but like I used to have to go to the store.
mm.
My family growing up, we grew food. Like, and I didn't live in like an Amish town. We like had a garden. That was just what people did.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right. It does contribute a lot to the collapse
Yeah. There's so much
because guys
less.
need friction, right? We need a challenge. We actually need challenge. That
Yeah.
like it awakens something in us, and it fuels something in us that a lack of challenge really it hurts us when it's dormant.
Yeah. We don't learn how to handle challenge. So the other let's call it just broadly group of men that's coming to mind when we're starting this conversation. You said the collapse man, and what you started to describe was, like what you described. And you also said in there, kind of like tuning out or opting out a little bit. And I see a version of that, and I'm just going to like bring in term incels, but that kind of area of a lot of the time young men, but not always, who seem to have taken this mode of opting out of a part of life, which is like relating with women and their own, internal feminine, i.e., having any kind of compassion for the world outside of them, and like very much stuck in what we kind of know, I suppose, is their adolescent mode in psychology, and haven't really developed past then. Where would you place these guys? Because there's a fucking lot of dudes right now, and like I can get it and understand it, but I also can, understand how really fucking ineffective that shit's going to be if they don't have a process of maturing through that.
I break that group down into two sections. One is they have a little bit of they're on the autism spectrum. So you have some guys who are neurodivergent in some capacity, which makes them a little bit more socially challenged. Like their social timing is off. I remember watching some people in college and just being like, oh, he doesn't get, like he walks into a circle of people and then that circle kind of dissipates. Then he walks into the next circle and that circle dissipates because he doesn't know how to flow in the conversation. He doesn't know the appropriate joke, etc. I think now we would say a lot of those people have some kind of neurodivergence. And that group I just genuinely feel for, truly. Then we have a group of guys who have fully embraced a victim mentality. That at like age 11, 12, 13, got rejected by a girl and then took that to heart and literally said, it's their fault. There's nothing I can do about this. It's not me. It's not the numbers game. It's not, not the things that people with a healthy self-esteem, even when we're young, like, wow, that really sucks that Susie Johnson said, no, she doesn't want to go out with me. But then you get a little bit older and they're like, oh, we're just not a good match. I'm so glad that she actually realized that. And that's okay. There's more to me than this one person's affirmation. And so I don't have a lot of compassion for that group because that group seems to be a silo, right? An echo chamber of fuck women. It's women's fault. They owe me something. And I've worked with a couple of these guys in my career, and what they need is they need wins. These are the guys like, hey, you got to start going to the gym. You got to start eating better. You got to have other goals and build up some esteem outside of the feminine arena or the romantic arena that you can go, oh, there's more to me here. Right. And do the things that you actually are projecting that other guys just quote have. Like you got to work on your hygiene. You got to dress a little bit better. Like actually practice some social interaction or social engagement. Like talk to the girl at the supermarket who's doing checking out your groceries. Like, oh, you made her smile. Guess what? That's a skill.
Yeah.
It's a transferable skill. Not everybody's just, quote, born with that, right? I get it.
Yeah.
There are guys who are tall, handsome, long hair, rich, all the things. And what do you know? Women just fawn all over them. There are also guys with all of those same qualities who women don't,
Mm.
because they don't have any personality. They haven't built up any experience or any way of connecting, any way of sharing. They don't like they're just not good in relationship. So
Yeah.
that
They haven't
that
got the
group,
depth in them as well.
right?
Right.
Yeah, there's no
Like if you're trying to
depth.
be a carbon copy of someone else, when we get beneath the surface, there's no depth, there's nothing there.
Right.
And
Like
that
there
I
were,
think might be
go
another
ahead.
little section perhaps where maybe these guys, you know, do train and do go to the gym, but maybe there's, to those points, there's the rejection of the feminine and the focus there, and so then fuck that. But then all of a
Right.
sudden, what I see as well is this almost doubling down on the validation and approval of the bros, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
fuck all of that. It's all here. And maybe we do at the gym, and maybe we do focus solely on our bodies, because fuck that. And then, you know, it can become that kind of game. Maybe it intensifies the objectification of women, i.e. turning someone into an object who doesn't have feelings and, you know, as much right to be a human as you do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of I see a lot on the internet of it, of echo chambery, of like, bros, we got to stay together. You know, like it's
Yeah.
us against women. You're like, man, guess what? You're lonely as fuck. Just admit it. And so is everybody in your little group here.
Mm,
And you're just making each other feel better, as opposed to actually dealing with the fact that you got hurt and you got rejected. And that's not
mm,
fun for anybody.
mm,
And it may have happened multiple times, but guess what? That's also part of the initiation of most men, right?
mm,
Most guys between, up
mm,
until their mid to late 20s, most guys don't make much money. They don't have any power in the world. They don't have any status. They haven't figured shit out yet. So
mm.
what do you know? You may not be very attractive to the 29-year-old supermodel who you want to date, who has access to men 18 to 60 and has a lot more choice than you do. And so I
Yeah.
get that. Like, I remember my early 20s, like going into bars and being like, wow, I'm like the skinniest, like I'm the brokest, skinniest dude here. Women are not approaching me. This
Mm,
is not happening. So I work on some other shit,
yeah.
right? Like maybe make that focus on, this is what I hope guys listening to this take away. There's nothing more attractive than like a holistic life, right?
Mm,
Once you get past a certain age, once you get past like 28, you're well-rounded. That's actually attractive.
mm,
You've read a book in the last month. That's actually attractive. You know how to cook. That's actually attractive. You've traveled. That's attractive. You take care of yourself. That's attractive. You have interests beyond getting laid, and perhaps, I'm not going to pick on video games, but just doing something that's, often deemed as adolescent.
mm,
That's attractive.
mm.
And it may not, yes, you may not be able to, I'm just gonna date myself again. Like, you may not be able to get Cindy Crawford, but there's wonderful,
Man is dating
wonderful women
himself, and it
who
is allowed.
she's out there somewhere reading my shit. I know it, Mike. I just know it. I hope you're listening to this podcast, Cindy.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
I'll talk to her people.
that's where I think those guys go wrong,
Mm, yeah,
right?
and that's
You're right. It's sole focus on women.
yeah. Or if you're, you know, so one, so you had some experiences that now you're just saying it was other people's fault, one person's fault, everyone else's fault. So there's no ownership, and you know that's part of the process. Like how do I navigate those challenging times? Well, if I make my part of my life being anti something or a group of people, what kind of a fucking existence is that? And again, when I scratch beneath the surface, there's no depth there.
Mm.
And to your point there, like that's what I heard there. You know, describing a man who's got some depth to him. And you know, I also love this idea of, you know, what I believe is so attractive is someone who's like actually settled in their skin. And I think for a lot of guys, we're terrified of actually like landing in our own skin.
Mm.
We want that, right? And I'm sure you see this as well. I want to feel like comfortable in here. It might not be worded that way initially. We might eventually get there. But if you want to feel comfortable in your skin, you got to try that shit on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying on someone else's skin or fucking the ideas of some other douchebag on the fucking internet who might be up on rape charges and all this kind of shit, then you're still not trying on your own skin.
Right.
And I think to your point about, you know, like it's almost part of the initiation, what it really is. If you're in an echo chamber of dudes just like you, so much fun, and it's great having your mates who you can banter with and talk shit with and be kept honest by. But if there aren't men who've had different life experiences and more life experience around you, we talk about elders, obviously you've got some wonderful ones in your life. We don't get access to something that's out there in front of us. It's possible, right?
Yeah, for sure. Right. Like I was so blessed to come up through a martial arts environment, like a jiu-jitsu world and a CrossFit world. Right. I imagine it was the same with rugby, where you have guys that, oh, you're a lawyer, you're an engineer, you're a bartender, you're a cop, you work for the fucking CIA, you're an airline pilot. We all do this thing together, which is our commonality. But then what do we do after? We go get a beer. We go hang out. We go to someone's house on the weekend to watch a fight, or to go to a barbecue, or to, just do something. And so these different men have input and imprint on us. I think that's the danger of an echo chamber. Is I just left, a jiu-jitsu class 3 hours ago with a personal trainer, an airline pilot, and like 2 other things that I don't know about, right? Like that aren't these are my ideas, but these guys are in my circle now. So I do pick up a little bit from them, and they pick up a little bit from me. And it just makes for a more, I don't want to say a more well-rounded man so that he's more attractive, because then again, that puts the impetus on getting quote a woman. But like, man, that just makes for a more interesting life.
Yeah. And I think we get to expand that idea too. Like attractive, i.e. appealing as a human.
Exactly.
Do I want to spend time with that dude? Like attractiveness can be one little aspect of someone's physical attractiveness to the person or people that they desire romantically, sexually. But actually, like, what kind of a human, I love this. We've done a lot of work and explored the work of Francis Weller, and he, talks about this idea of, we always seem to be seeking belonging. At some point, we need to be a place of welcome. And like, I fucking love this idea, and I talk about it a lot in my program. And there's different pieces to it. But if we break down the last part, this place of welcome, someone asked me the other day about that, like, oh, is what I'm hearing in that, like, basically being someone that others are comfortable to be around. And it's like, well, possibly a part of it, but it's more so, are you comfortable being around yourself? Because some people might not be comfortable around that. But if you give the example, you start to give permission for people to feel comfortable either with you in themselves, or to exit your company, right? Because there's a groundedness there. There's not this like almost immature reaction to, the subtle art of not giving a fuck, where it's like 0 fucks given. That's not it. That's being a psychopath. That's indifference. That's apathy. It's actually like being okay in your skin. If some people don't like you, I don't need to give a fuck about that. But there's people here I really give a fuck about, and I do appreciate their feedback, their respect, etc. Right?
Yeah. And for yourself, again, I'll come back to our group of male friends. I want to sleep with none of you ever. Yet they're like the most attractive people to me, right? Like, I want to spend time with you. I drove multiple hours to hang out with Connor the other day. Like, I want to hang out with you. Like, wow, tell me about your life. Be with me. Be in community with me. I want to learn from you. But more, it's not even learning as if it's a gain. It's just like, dude, tell me about your life. Your life is rad. I want to be around other people who have rad lives, because it inspires me to live a dope ass life too.
Do you think it also inspires maybe, or gives permission for you to also kind of like acknowledge and value your own life?
Yeah, it's the reflection definitely goes both ways.
Yeah.
Right? It's permission, first of all, to be like, yeah, this is awesome. I have chosen a slightly unconventional path for my life. Right? And that is often lonely. It just is. Right? That's just the more complex your life is, the more different your life is, the less people can relate to it. So one, just being around people who my shoulders get to drop, I get to exhale and be like, you guys get me. That feels amazing in and of itself. It's also inspiring when I go like, man, what are you doing? What did you do last week? What did you do last month? And it's not, extreme athletes. It's not, just the size and scope of it. It's I love how you think, right? Like, I love how you think. I want to know how you think. I love watching your mind take a problem or a conversation and then regurgitate something and be like, man, I never would have thought of that. I appreciate it and see it. And like, you nailed it. You landed on it. But like, my brain wouldn't have worked that way. And that to me is going to be, if we all hang out for the next 50 years, we'll have fascinating lives. I don't know, maybe we're just like geeky conversationalists, like kind of dorky, but can also deadlift and
Right. But also there's a word that you said earlier that I think it really fucking lands to me. And that's the word imprint. You know, like we talk about modeling. I've talked about this before as well on the podcast, I think, where we often look at, certainly for me, and there's many forms of modeling, but certainly for me, and one of the big models that we look at is like, what was our model of manhood? Was that a father figures? And we might have had great ones. We might have had fucking nothing, a whole mixed bag, absolute fucking chaotic bag of dicks. But we forget, I think, that we're still being modeled, right? We still have imprint happening all the time. And so, like, for example, if you're a dude who didn't have great modeling growing up, guess what? You're still being modeled to, and you still have that opportunity. Now, to the point earlier, if you put yourself in an echo chamber of adolescent boys, that's what's imprinting on you. Whereas if you choose, men and people around you who, to your beautiful point, you are interested in, who are interesting, who bring you something different and something affirming as well, that's the same. It's like, that imprint, I think, is such a beautiful word because it's so present and available.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the best way to say it. It's there. It's like, hey, take this or not. And even if it's not take it or not, some of it rubs off on us.
Yeah,
right? Like I leave our
you got to try
calls
hard, right?
Yeah, right.
If you drop one of these perhaps dudes that we're talking about who's gone anti the fucking world and woman into our circle, and he goes, I'm going to be here for a year. He's going to have to try really fucking hard not to absorb some of the print that we have as individuals and a collective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I love hanging out, Mike, with men who've done the work. But what's even more interesting, I will say, I did a workshop with Jeremy and Leela in the DR over Christmas, and maybe 80% of the men there were either in the nation or had been to other men's workshops and done men's work. And to listen on day 2 to the women go, hey, I just want to raise my hand and say, this is weird. I've never felt this comfortable around a group of men. You guys sit still, you ask questions, you listen when people are talking, no one's interrupted. There's been no sideways glances, there's been no like leaky sexual energy. Like, this is phenomenal. Almost unsettling, but phenomenal. And so just to sit back and reflect on like, yeah, you're right. It's so different to be in a room full of men who have done the work. As someone, even just as a viewer, and then to witness other people's reactions to it. You're right. It would be really fucking hard. We should just do this like fresh air kid. I don't know if they have fresh air kids in where you are.
No.
Like, where a kid from the city will come live up in like
right.
Vermont for the summer and like live on a farm, and they'll get to see how like, those people live. We could do like a fresh air incel camp where like we take one incel a year and he has to come hang out with us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look, especially if there's any out there that have got, a little bit of a glint in their eye about journalism or, wanting to like be some kind of reporter, like there's a story in that for you. Now we do, I imagine, and we've talked about it a lot, we see a lot of similar men, similar challenges, similar situations. I think, I often, to be honest, sometimes feel challenged by the question that is along the lines of like, what are the greatest problems you see in men? But the question I actually want to ask you is a little bit of a deviation. What do you think are some of the more, let's call it, important problems that guys might be missing?
Ooh. I'm going to take this deep first.
Let's go.
I talk to so many men who have this tiny little like soul inkling of what they want to do with themselves. And it is up against decades of patterning, conditioning, mortgage payments, a society that asks them like, who are you to do this? Like, how dare you leave the tribe or whatever it is. So that, like, when I get a guy, Mike, who will say, hey man, we'll talk. This is how it always fucking happens. We'll talk for like 45 minutes about other shit. And he'll be like, you know what? There's something else I want to bring up in the last few minutes here. I just had this happen yesterday, right? He's like, I don't know why I did this, but I went on an audition for a movie part. Like my friend told me I should go, and I went, and like, I've never felt more alive. I'm like, cool. How long have you been interested in acting? Like, well, my whole life it's been
Yeah, yeah.
it's been this like, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an anesthesiologist. Like, okay, well, tell me about that. Like, well, I come from a long line of anesthesia, and I'm just using a fantastical
Yeah,
example
yeah.
in that regard. But I think one of the
Yeah.
things men are missing is the depth of the question.
Mm,
What do you want for your life as a man? What do you need as a man? And those the last three words, as a man, change those two questions radically. So when I get a group of nice guys together, which I do often,
mm,
and say, what are your needs as a man? I almost always get some kind of avoidant or deflection of like, well, just men. So I need food, I need water, I need shelter. I'm like, awesome. I need those things too. If those all went away, my other needs as a man would become far less important. But now that I have those, and I know I can survive living under a bridge if I have those, but I really want to elevate to the next level, then I have to actually figure out
mm,
as a man, what makes me come alive? What makes me tick? What makes me thrive? Right. And I often boil this down with guys, and
mm.
it's not like extravagance often, Mike. Like I've never had a guy go a 250-foot yacht, like I've never had
Yeah.
him like 7 Lamborghinis. What it often is time in nature, a sense of awe, a
Mm,
place for my creative side to come out, uh physical relationships with men that have
mm,
some kind of like wrestling or tussle, or like sex in a certain flavor or in a certain capacity. For me, like the ocean, I need to be in the ocean a
mm,
couple times a year. I need to write as a man. So I think those are biggies. I also will say, and I know this may be a little bit more higher level or esoteric, that guys need a fucking vision for their lives, man.
mm,
Like when we actually can answer the question, what are you building?
mm,
I've just seen hundreds, if not thousands of men now go from chaos, disorganization, procrastination, challenge to focus, to laser focus. Are there
mm,
days when they fuck off and watch Netflix on the couch? Absolutely.
mhm,
But those are usually because they're just exhausted or they're tired or something. It's not the norm.
mm,
I guarantee you, if we walked out in the street and we grabbed a dude and said, "Hey, what are you building? What's your vision for your life here?" They'd look at us like we were like, "I don't fucking know, man. I just want a paycheck and like to be left alone." Or like,
yeah.
I want to get laid twice a month. I don't know. Like that's that thing.
Mm,
And so we can even break that down a tiny step further. And this isn't something that's often missing. I just know the statistics on how many men have it. It's literal goals.
mm,
Like, do you have a goal right now? I know what happens to my life when I set a hard goal and I set a timeline on it.
mm,
Oh, the like desire to watch serial killers on Netflix, the desires to eat shitty food, the desires to skip going to the gym, that suddenly goes right to the side,
mm,
right? I don't know if you like if you've competed after your professional career, but like if I even just signed up for like a Tough Mudder, or like I signed up for a triathlon once and I hate running. And suddenly I was out there like every damn day. Like, look at me, I'm a runner now, you
yeah.
know? And it wasn't the world championships it was like Long Beach, Rotary Club minimal triathlon. But because I'd signed up and committed to it,
Mm,
it changed everything. So I'd say
yeah.
that's what a lot of men aren't committed to anything.
Mm,
Right? Well, they don't stand for anything. Like, what are you
mm,
doing? I don't want to get to the end of my life and look back and go, I don't know. I just kind of free floated
mm.
because I have
I
worked
made
with,
it.
yeah, I made it, right? I've worked with So many guys when I did spend time in hospice who were like, this
Yeah.
thing goes like that. You will wake up tomorrow and you will be where I am, sitting in a wheelchair in a nursing home in Albuquerque, praying for death. And I was like,
Mm,
fuck, I want to do some shit before I punch my card out at the end of the ride. And I think that's missing from so many men. Like
mm,
that's why I said in the initial answer to your question, like, what does your soul want?
mm,
I get it. That is a luxury question for a lot of people. And if you have a sick mom and a sick kid and a mortgage, I get it. You do what you fucking have to do.
mm,
But so many men don't have that and then don't take advantage of listening to go, oh, you know what?
mm,
I think I may want to be an actor. I think I want to play music. I had a guy who'd retired. He was in his 60s the other day. I was like, I think I just want to move to Nashville and play music. And I was like, why are we still on the phone?
mm.
Why aren't you packing the U-Haul and
Yeah.
driving your ass to Nashville? And it was the like, well, like I don't know. What are people like? I'm active in my church here. I'm active in this year. I was like,
Mm,
bro, you wouldn't have brought that up if you didn't want me to hammer it on you.
yeah. Yeah.
Call me in a week. Phone call me again.
Yeah, and I think like as Jeremy, our good friend, says, right, the fear shouts and the heart whispers, and often we've created a lot of fucking noise, and it can be challenging and to even tune into that whisper, right, of our soul. But I think
Yeah.
even to the example of those really fucking tough situations that you've just kind of alluded to a couple of examples there, sick people, you're in survival mode basically.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think that means that you necessarily have to tune that out. You can still listen to the soul whisper, right? Because there's always
Yeah.
going to be something for us in being of
Mhm.
service. And I think that's one of the things that, I think a lot of guys as well miss. That wasn't where I was planning on going on this, but a lot of the time we get into this work, we're going to figure this thing out, the one that looks back at us in the mirror. And I know to be true for me and for a lot of men that I've worked with, somewhere along the lines in there, we find this desire to be a fucking useful human, right? To be of service to others. As we know, for nice guys, a lot of them are living an empty version of that, which is let me do all the things and then I get the praise, etc.
Mhm.
But even to the point of like, you might not, have that really challenging situation of a sick parent that you're looking after or something, but there's something for you. And one of the things I think I've stumbled upon perhaps in this world of personal development, let's call it, is we love to have grand ideas that a lot of the time I think of just fucking total bullshit. For example, like find your one purpose in life. And I feel like that and messages like that can be very challenging for guys to hear because it's a giant expectation.
Yeah.
And, it might not be that you have to, this is a different dude who's at a different stage in life, but if you're 27, go, I need to move to Nashville. But maybe you need to be fucking playing music. It doesn't
Mhm.
need to give you all of the money that you need, but if it's going to give you some of what your heart and your soul needs, then what the fuck are you doing not tuning into that? But we
Right.
can kind of almost make the mistake. Like it needs to be the thing that gives me everything, including, my financial security, let's say.
Mm. Yeah, there's misnomers about it. I think,
Mm,
Carolyn May speaks a lot about this. That she's like, most people pray and be like, I pray to find my purpose. Now, I'll know it's my purpose when it comes with a 7-figure paycheck,
yeah.
like a supermodel, a private jet, a house in the Hamptons, a house in Aspen, ease, flow. I will never be tired.
Mm.
It'll come with like my hair will grow back. Like it'll come with all the things. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
And
you're
maybe all the recognition that keeps telling me that this is my purpose too, right?
exactly
Yeah.
cover of the New York Times. Like it's, oh, that's my purpose. I like to think also or tell men your purpose may be like a well that has tributaries coming off of it. And at
Mm,
this stage of your life, you're dealing with that tributary.
mm,
Like my purpose is here to serve humanity. I was fulfilling my purpose when I was bodyguarding.
mm,
Is my purpose to be a bodyguard? No. But I moved from that to something else that was of service. Was
mm,
my purpose to be an acupuncturist? No, it was short lived. Right. But it got me also from there to the next thing, which was, oh, my purpose is actually to be writing. Okay. What am I writing about? That's going to change.
mm,
So letting some flexibility happen and taking your foot off like the hyper gas.
Mm.
that your purpose in this moment may just to be taking really good care of yourself. Your purpose in this
Mm.
moment may be getting healthy, right? Your purpose in this moment may be going from here to here educationally. And
Mm.
that's it. You're gonna spend 4 years in grad school studying. You're gonna do that stuff. And that's okay.
Mm.
Right. It seems like you nail this. Like it needs to be this like only a millimeter wide, laser sharp, and it can never fucking change, or it's not your purpose. And it's like, of course, guys are like, well, I'll just check out of the game then.
Yeah. And, like a question I like to ask is, all right, so tell me then someone who you think is a great example of someone living their one purpose. And I tell you what, fucking crickets usually come after that. And we might say someone like, like Nelson Mandela or something. It's like, well, that's a fucking giant bar right there.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
Right.
show me people who are living with purpose, like beautiful.
Mm.
It's there's so many, right, that we
Right.
can dive into. And I think that differentiation, and perhaps, yeah, maybe the challenge that we get to is, what's the thing I need to do with my life? Like the thing that's my job. And maybe the focus more is on like, who do you want to be? Because that's something that we get to address every day, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there are people who use their job as a finance and security means to do something else. And you know what their purpose is? Every Saturday they volunteer
Mm.
at here at a soup kitchen. They work with disadvantaged kids. They do something that has zero financial gain,
Mm.
zero stability in that way. And there are
Yeah.
people who take their music and they turn it into a career.
Mm.
And there are people who don't.
Mm.
And that's okay. There's some decision factors, and there's also some evidence factors from the world,
Mm.
right? And there's some comeuppance, like, oh, you don't just get to pick up a guitar for the first time and say, well, this is my purpose. Where's the paycheck?
Yeah.
Just like
Right.
anything else, right?
Yeah.
So I hope people
Mm.
relax a little bit around this idea.
Yeah, but
I
take
really
it seriously at the same time, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what I'd like to speak to too, Mike, is it's painful. Like I remember my 20s and long chunks of my 20s where I was like, what am I actually supposed to be doing?
Mm.
And it like hurt me. It really did upset me. It created a lot of anxiety, a lot of just dysregulation. Like I wasn't happy. I didn't know what to
Mm.
do. And I feel like that is a lot of people when they figure it out until they figure it out,
Yeah.
right? And I'd watch my friend be like, "Oh, you've been working for the same company for 8 years. You're crushing it. You just got your third, promotion, and you love what you do." Okay, well, I also have friends who have changed careers like 8 times,
Mm.
and then they thought that was their purpose, and then something happened, and now that's their purpose, and
Mm.
and so just to also speak to, it's the suffering in that is often real.
Mm.
And so I get that with guys, especially
Yeah.
guys. Like, I get it, man. I get it. You're 26, you don't know what to do with yourself. Like, also go fucking play. Go see the world.
Mm.
Go explore. You just like Francis Waller says, like you don't have enough material yet.
Yeah.
You've lived in the same town and you've read 5 books and you're trying to figure out what in this whole big wide world and all of these options you're supposed to be. Go do some exploring.
Yeah. And, to that point where he talks about, what does he say? I wouldn't wish upon anyone an injury-free life, because
Right.
they would have no depth. Those come through encounter with suffering, and suffering can be many
Mhm.
things, but also through experience and challenge and getting yourself into situations, and right, there's that depth thing again.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into Traver Boehm a little bit, and your
Okay.
depth. What are the things that challenge you these days? Are there things that perhaps bring you, maybe this is a loaded term, but we'll go there, crisis of confidence, or where the doubt really comes in?
Yeah, Mike, I think some of this, right? That I've really struggled this year, particularly. I don't know what happened towards the end of last year, that whether it was turning my age or spending so much time building a company and a brand and a movement, and then getting to the point of, you know what, I don't want to spend most of my day engaged in business only.
Mm.
Or maybe it was moving to Denver, but it was my tussle with, there's a very real part of me that wants to leave society. And I don't know if that's 14-year-old fantasy or if it's actually true. Like, I want to spend my life engaged in something real, in the
Mm-hmm.
wilderness, in the ocean, fishing, hunting, like living off the land. Like I watch like shows of people that homestead, I'm like, oh my God, that seems so incredible. I
Mm.
also have a G-Wagon in my driveway, right? And I fucking love it. And I love going to Whole Foods, and I love my couch. And I watch a lot of serial killer shows on Netflix, and I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy nice things. I
Mm.
love my house. I love my girlfriend. I love the safety and the comfort of relationship.
Mm.
And so it's my major tussle is the marrying of the wild and the domestic.
Mm.
And I've talked to psychologists about this. I've talked to our Jungian people. I've talked to you guys about it. It like for a long time, it really was a predominant, like, I'm not okay in the world with this thing. I don't know what
Mm.
to do. And so that's a real thing. And I know this may sound privileged, but I have so many things that I want to do with my time and with my life. And I feel like whatever I'm doing in that moment, I want to do more of and do forever. And then immediately I'll switch like this. Like, I wish I could just be
Mm.
interviewed for the rest of my life. I wish I could interview people for the rest of my life, you know? And then an hour from now, I'm going to start writing and be like, man, I wish I could just write for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow morning, I'm going to go back to the gym and I'll be like, man, I wish I could just lift weights and swing a kettlebell for the rest of my life.
Mm.
Not happy where I am a lot of times, wishing I was doing something else. And then when I'm doing that thing, wishing I was doing the thing before it. And
Mm.
it's been my whole life, been
Mm.
my entire life. I've tried to pack as much life into everything as I could, and wishing I had more time. Or I used to joke with people. I would tell all my ex-girlfriends, like, I wish I could clone myself. And like one of me would go live in the islands and just become an awesome surfer. One of me would go scuba dive. One of me would get like a yoga certification. So those are my challenges, man. And
Mm.
and uh, those are some of my challenges, right? I have a sick
Yeah.
parent that I'm navigating. I'm at my own stage of life where I'm realizing I don't have the energy I had when I'm 25. Still have a fuckload of energy, but I do appreciate like a day off now,
Mm.
and then have to like tussle with that of like, am I wasting my time? What else could I be doing right now? As an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, that's a constant question, but just as how I'm
Mm-hmm.
how I'm wired, I don't sit still well, but also I'm now realizing that my battery is a little less full than it was 15 years ago or even 10 years
Yeah.
ago, and that's not going to get better.
Mm.
Like, I eat healthy, I take care of myself. I don't, it's not like, oh man, if I just get sober and stop living on Snickers and Skittles, like,
Yeah.
it's like
The fuck are you
I do
doing?
all the things, right? Yeah. So some of
So,
that.
in amongst all of the head noise,
Mm.
how do you navigate like the actual feelings of that discomfort and like almost irritability and so on?
I don't want this to sound too abstract, but I try to have as much grace as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I start my every morning I meditate for about a half hour and pray and just ask for grace of like, hey, help me stay calm today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who you are or what you are or what's going on, but if you could just drop like a little bit of calm the fuck down into my life, I would appreciate that. And so when I do feel it starting to kick up and kick up and kick up,
Yeah.
that's how I navigate it. I think, wow, I actually do think, like, what a privilege.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I talk to men and
Mm.
women who have legitimate health challenges, who don't have the options, right? Like, I have a challenge of too many options. I
Mm.
also have, as you know, have elders in my life, and I've heard them say, I only have 15 more years. I
Mm.
only have 10 more years. And the last chunk of those years probably won't be that good.
Mm.
And that like lands in me hard
Mm.
to go, if those guys could be 47 again, they would.
Mm.
They wouldn't be sitting around whining that like they have too many options. They would try to stay as present as they possibly could to their lives in that moment. So
Mm.
that's what I try to do.
Nice. I like it. I was talking about this with some guys recently. We are talking about this idea of the pursuit of happiness, right? And one of the guys in the program, he kind of said, I think what's landing for me is I think the pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I
It
was like,
is.
listen to this guy's fucking drop the mic right there, right? Because I think that's something that a lot of us can wrestle with, and I see this as well, my own version of it, but in a lot of guys where we're, regardless of our own individual circumstances, we've also got this drive to do and accomplish, and that energy can really be there. And then fuck, that might be in the basement, clocking the next game, whatever. I was gonna age myself there with GoldenEye, Nintendo 64, but there's this doing, right? And we've often, as a society as well, we've given value to men almost exclusively because of what we can do and accomplish, and it can be very challenging to sit, right?
Yeah. You nailed it. That guy nailed it. I heard the definition of spirituality this past weekend was literally just being fully present in your body and then being fully present in the world. And everything else is just window dressing and pomp and circumstance after that. I was like, wow, that is a phenomenal definition. Okay. That's yeah. So it's a practice of returning, like, okay, what am I enjoying now? I love the question, of 15 years from now, you will wish that you were where you are now. And you will wish that you appreciated where you are now. And I can look back, in my early 30s when I was building another business. It was chaos. And I even like, God, I wish I had our original t-shirt. I remember, I had so many of them that I would like throw them out and they get turned into like rags. And now I was like, well, I wish I'd saved one. And it's kind of the same. Like, I wish I'd allowed myself to be there for a little bit more of that journey while it was going on, as opposed to constantly thinking like, well, what if we got a bigger building? What if we got more employees? What if we,
Where's it going?
yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
and I think that's a real challenge, right? To be almost in that kind of constantly living in preparation for the future.
for sure.
So let's forecast. I'm aware of the time, but I want to play with this one. Let's forecast into. Look, it could be a potential future. So we'll see. Maybe it's the most civilized job on the planet, and you'll break out in highs when I ask it. But let's go to a hypothetical situation. Traver Boehm is the president of the United States.
What do I do?
What do you do? What are your first? What are among your first, let's call it, executive orders, do you think?
I fire every fucking lobbyist on the planet and I make that illegal. You cannot give money to a politician in any way. Or I cap how much money a politician can receive for their thing. I break every tie between the government, big pharma, big food, and the healthcare system. And go, you guys are no longer allowed to like be the head of Pfizer and then go be in the FDA, the Food Drug Administration. I break all of the corrupt ties. And then I actually start an initiative that's two pronged. One is fitness and health based. The other is meditative and mental health based. And I tell everybody in America who's fighting over which fucking side of the street they think they're on, both being played by their own parties, and say, we're also going to get together a lot. There's going to be some damn unity around here. I don't know how we force this, but it may be like push-up competitions in the street, or it may be like forced barbecues in each town. Right? I think I overhaul the education system and completely make it accessible to boys. I think like, hey, you know what? You're not supposed to sit in a classroom for 8 hours. And if you can't do that, we put you on Ritalin. I think those are some of the biggies, Mike. I think high school has to actually prepare people for life. There need to be classes on emotional intelligence, on conversation, on relationship, on how do you deal with heartbreak, on how do you deal with hard times, how do you get resilience. I think that's the biggies, is like we get rid of the fuckery and the cronyism and the corruption, which we as America pretend we don't have. Like, no, look at us, we're the model democracy. Okay, like our president's kid was just caught with like crack and a gun, and they're like, it's okay, and like texts of him like making deals with China, like this isn't okay. People are gonna hate me for this one. 2 or 3 days a week, we're just going to kill the internet. Sorry, you guys got to go outside. Yeah,
Get
I
the
know you're
fuck
going to be real.
outside.
People aren't going to be real happy with me. We may even kill like cell coverage. It's like, oh, guess what? Welcome to the 80s. We all survived. You know, you're gonna go outside and play. I think here in the West and in America specifically, we are so unhealthy.
Mm,
And I mean that in every capacity of the word healthy,
mm,
from physicality to the food we eat to just the like that would be our focus. I would say, like, isn't there a national happiness quotient in Bhutan or something? Like that's how they measure how they're
mm,
doing. I would get America healthy again.
mm.
Like real healthy, healthy physically, healthy mentally, healthy emotionally, and healthy spiritually. That would be my first thing. I would also see like, can Dolly Parton and Shakira both come to my inauguration? And if there's any possible way, I'll leave that sentence right there.
He wields his power with maturity and
There'd
grace.
be a little bit of corruption. Yeah. Every Thursday is National Surf Day. Everybody's off. You know,
Yeah,
all
I
of my
love.
cabinet is like you guys and the high level deadlifters.
I love the ideas in there though, and you know, because it is an interesting country certainly to witness, you know, from the outside, but you could do that for anywhere really, you know, because you have your view, your view of the world, and then you know everything else tends to look a little bit different. But you said it in one of your earlier answers to something in terms of traveling and getting the fuck out there and seeing the world. You know, it can broaden your ideas. And I think one of the things I heard in that as well, you know, from the shutting down the internet to, you know, those other pieces that kind of lend itself to being a community more, you know, the two sides of the street.
For sure.
You know, I can't remember what it was recently where I was, someone was, I think, explaining a story, something along the lines of, it's very easy to look at certainly the fucking internet and see how quote unquote divided everyone is. But when you actually go and interact with people, we're pretty ready to connect and be human with. But we tend to have a lot of things getting in the way of that. And at the end of the day, we're humans, right? And I think, you know, human connection and as we see, right, so much research these days and the power of connection, good relationships, and therefore the immense kind of, let's call it destructive power that loneliness, you know, toxic relationships can have on someone's like actual immune system and longevity in these pieces. So I love that. And the breadth of health, right? Because again, it's one of those things that we were talking about earlier with attractiveness. We could look at it in one simple way, but health is actually so broad. And to work on the health of the human and the community really is to work on the health of the nation. Traver for POTUS.
Yeah. Thank you. 2028.
Brother, thank you for that. I'm aware of the time, so I'll start wrapping us up.
Thank you.
Is there anything at the moment that you've got going on that you want to share? And we can, you know, put links and all that stuff in. But then beyond that, is there anything else that's on your heart, on your soul, that you'd like to share based on the conversation we've had?
Yeah, it's nothing coming up at the moment that's that local. Like, get my book, get your hands on my book, read it. And if you're going through a breakup or divorce, get a hold of Today I Rise. That's the first book I wrote. And I want people listening to find ways to create some hope for themselves. I get like messages from like left, right, and center from people who have read both books saying, thank you for being honest. And thank you for giving me a little bit of hope. And when I get the first one, I'm like, cool. I don't really know how else to be but honest. When I write. The hope one like fucks me up because I just want people to feel that, to go, hey, wherever you are, whatever station you're at, no matter what's happened, like there is another side to this coin. And please don't think you have to do that suffering alone. That's it. Like so often people just say, like, I'll write them back and be like, oh, thank you so much for this lovely email. I hope such and such. And the response to that is, I never thought anyone would ever reply to this. Just to know someone's out there replying. Like, I thought your assistant would reply. I'm like, no, there's humans behind all of this. So I really, really hope, like, that's my takeaway is one, guys, if you're shooting for the stars, like, fucking go for it. If
Mm,
you're clawing yourself off rock bottom right now, that's okay too.
mm,
Uh, this is like you said, think wide, think deep.
mm.
This human experience is so vast and so fascinating, and there's so much to it. Like, fight fucking hurt if you're hurting, and reach out and pick someone up if you're not.
Beautiful.
Thank you, brother.
Traver, thank you so much for coming, chatting, sharing, diving into some of,
Pleasure.
your own challenges as well. Personally, I have so much admiration and respect for you, for the work that you do. I'm inspired by you regularly.
Thank you.
And,
Grateful.
we've spoken about it in community. You've got broad shoulders and sometimes you carry perhaps more than you need to. And I feel privileged that I can be part of, supporting you and putting those down, and vice versa. But yeah, the words that were kept repeating I think I woke up this morning with these words in my head as I was thinking about our conversation, was, the words that you speak to a lot in essence, which is the primal and the divine. And, they're two words that actually were coming to mind because I was thinking of you, not because you talk about them so much, but because you embody them. And yeah, it's a privilege to be in a relationship with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're absolute legend.
Thank you, Mike. I love you, brother. Looking forward to seeing you soon, man.